My beloved brothers and sisters, today I want you to reflect deeply, not just with your minds, but with your hearts. We live in a world where loud voices often dominate it, but it is in silence, in patience, in resilience, that true strength is hidden. And nowhere is this more evident than in the incredible, quiet power of a woman. Her dignity, her sacrifice, her strength behind closed doors. It changes generations. Allah has honored woman with a strength so noble, so divine, that many overlook it. But today, we will not overlook it. Today, we will recognize it. True strength does not always shout. It sometimes weeps in sujood. Many people associate strength with power, noise and visibility. But in the sight of Allah, strength is not about volume. It is about depth. It is not about being heard by the world. It is about being heard by the Creator. And this is where the silent power of a woman often lies. In the quiet moments, in the unseen prayers, in the tears that fall on the prayer mat when no one is watching. When a woman breaks down in front of Allah, seeking His help with full sincerity, she displays a kind of strength that many cannot comprehend. She might look weak in the eyes of the world. She might appear fragile. But in that sujood, she is standing tall in front of the heavens. So many women have carried burdens on their shoulders that would crush even the strongest of men. But they do it without complaining, without seeking applause, without trying to prove anything. They do it because they know Allah sees. They do it because their sujood is not just an act of worship. It is a silent scream, a release, a place of surrender and empowerment all at once. In that position of ultimate humility, they are closest to their Lord, and in that closeness, they find peace, courage, and resilience that the world will never understand. The strength in sujood is not about control. It's about letting go. It's about giving your fears, your worries, your pain, and your exhaustion to the one who created you. A woman who cries in sujood is not weak. She is brave enough to face what life throws at her and still turn to Allah. She may not be on a stage, she may not have a microphone, she may not be celebrated by society, but her dua echoes where it matters most. The angels write down her whispers. The heavens hear her pain. Her strength is not validated by followers or likes or comments. It is validated by the one who knows what the heart hides. And in this silent exchange between her and her Lord, a new kind of power is born. One that transforms pain into prayer. One that transforms fear into faith. This is why many of the most powerful women in our history were not known for loudness, but for their connection with Allah. Maryam says, alone, rejected by her people, gave birth to one of the greatest prophets. Khadija, R.A., in her silence, supported the Prophet on through the hardest years. Fatima, A.A., in her quiet strength, carried the light of the Prophet's lineage. These women showed us that strength is not always seen. It is often hidden in the heart, tested in hardship, and proven on the prayer mat. They didn't need to scream to change the world. They just needed to bow their heads in sujood and trust the plan of their Lord. A mother's dua, in the darkness of night, can shake the heavens. When the world is asleep and silence wraps the earth, there is one voice that travels straight to the throne of Allah. The whisper of a mother who raises her hands, tears falling, heart trembling, praying not for herself, but for her children. Her words may be quiet, but their power is unmatched, because her heart is sincere, her intentions are pure, and her love is selfless. In those unseen hours, when no one notices her struggles, she speaks to the one who knows her pain even before she expresses it. And that is when the heavens listen. That is when angels are commanded to say Ameen. The dua of a mother carries a weight that cannot be measured. It is not built on fancy words. It does not need eloquence. It is built on sacrifice. It is built on sleepless nights, itching backs, endless responsibilities, and a love that keeps giving even when nothing is left to give. She may not raise her voice, but her whispers reach beyond what any voice can. Her silent tears are recorded. Her broken sobs are heard, and every word she utters with sincerity becomes a force of mercy, of protection, of change. Many successful people walk the earth not realizing that their safety, their blessings, their rizq, and their peace is not just from their hard work, but from the dua of their mother in a moment of desperate love. It is the dua that said, Ya Allah, protect my child when I cannot. Ya Allah, guide my child when the world pulls them away. Ya Allah, let me see my child in Jannah. These duas may be spoken when the child is sleeping, or when the mother is awake all night crying because of their mistakes. And yet, Allah hears, Allah responds, Allah honors her plea. A mother may not be appreciated, she may be misunderstood, even ignored by the very people she loves most, but she keeps making dua, not because she is weak, but because she knows where true power lies. She doesn't shout at the world to listen. She turns to the Creator of the world, and says only what her heart can't hold anymore. She knows that even if no one else sees her sacrifice, Allah sees. And so she whispers her pain, her hopes, her dreams into the night, knowing full well that these prayers never go to waste, that even if the world delays, Allah never forgets, that even if her children stray, her dua can be the rope that pulls them back. The stories of righteous people often begin with a mother who prayed when no one else did, with a woman who believed in her child even when that child gave up on themselves, with a mother who stayed up crying for her son in prison, for her daughter in heartbreak, for her family in crisis. That is the silent power. That is the true miracle. A mother's dua, made in the darkness, becomes a light not just for her children, but for generations to come. Modesty is not weakness. It is divine armor. In a world that glorifies exposure and praises loudness, a modest woman often goes unnoticed by society. But in the sight of Allah, her value is elevated. Her silence is honored. Her dignity is rewarded. Modesty is not something that restricts her. It is something that protects her. It is not a burden. It is a shield. When a woman chooses modesty, whether in speech, clothing, behavior, or even in the way she carries herself, she is not giving in to weakness. She is standing tall in obedience to her Lord. Modesty is not about being silent or hidden away from the world. It is about being grounded in purpose. It is about knowing your worth without needing to display it to gain validation. A modest woman is not seeking attention, not because she lacks confidence, but because her confidence is rooted in something higher. She does not dress for people. She dresses for Allah. She does not speak to be admired. She speaks to be heard by the one who created her voice. Her boundaries are not limitations. They are signs of deep self-respect. In the story of Maryam is, one of the most honored women in history, we see the true beauty of modesty. She withdrew herself from the eyes of the world, not because she was afraid, but because she was chosen. She guarded her chastity, her dignity, her relationship with Allah, and it was through that modesty that she was given one of the greatest miracles of all time. Her silence was not weakness. It was a language of surrender and strength. The Quran honored her not just for her faith, but for haya, her modesty, her purity of heart. Today, when a woman chooses hijab, when she chooses to lower her gaze, when she chooses words carefully, when she chooses to walk with humility rather than pride, she is wearing her armor. She is walking against the current. She is carrying herself with a hidden power that the world may not understand. But Allah does. He sees her every effort. He records her every sacrifice. He knows when she struggles to hold on, when temptations rise, when people mock her for covering herself or staying quiet when others boast loudly. A modest woman holds a beauty that is beyond the physical. Her strength is not in being loud, but in being firm in her principles. She does not need to prove herself to the world, because she has already proven herself to her Lord. In a time when being bold is praised without wisdom, her restraint becomes her power, her humility becomes her strength, her silence becomes her voice, and her obedience becomes her victory. Modesty is not about hiding, it's about shining in a different way, a way that is not for the world's pleasure, but for Allah's. And that light, the light of haya, of humility, of dignity, cannot be dimmed by the noise of this dunya. It is a light that illuminates her path in this life and the next. Her patience in pain is rewarded beyond what eyes can see. In the quiet moments when no one understands what she is going through, when the world assumes she is fine just because she is silent, a woman bears her pain with a strength that can only come from deep faith. She holds in her tears, not because she has no emotion, but because she has learned to surrender. She walks through heartbreak, through betrayal, through loneliness and loss, not with loud complaints, but with a silent trust in Allah's plan. Every tear she hides, every wound she carries in silence, every moment she chooses sabr over anger, is counted, is seen, is loved by the most merciful. People may think she is just quiet, but Allah knows what that quietness is hiding. He knows the struggle behind her smile, the weight behind her stillness, the sleepless nights where she whispers His name instead of sharing her pain with the world. She doesn't seek sympathy because she seeks something far greater, reward from her Lord. She endures the pain not because she is numb, but because she has hope. Because she believes that even if the world turns its back on her, Allah never will. Because she knows that every difficulty carries a purpose, every trial brings her closer to Him. When she is wronged, when she is insulted, when she is treated unfairly, she restrains herself. She could respond, she could defend, she could fight back. But she chooses sabr. She chooses to leave it to Allah. Not out of weakness, but out of certainty. Certainty that her silence is not a loss. It is an investment. That her restraint is not a surrender. It is an act of trust. She doesn't curse her pain, because she knows that it is reshaping her soul. She doesn't rush her healing, because she knows that Allah's timing is perfect. Her patience in marriage, in motherhood, in hardship, in sickness, in grief, It all builds a legacy of quiet strength. She may never be celebrated for it in this world, but the angels record it all. The Prophet said that the affairs of a believer are strange. Everything becomes good for them if they show patience and gratitude. And a believing woman, who suffers in silence with dignity, who cries only to her Lord, who trusts His wisdom, even when her heart is breaking, is the living proof of this hadith. She becomes someone whose pain is transformed into light on the day of judgment, whose trials become mountains of reward, whose every sigh is multiplied into blessings beyond her imagination. This is the kind of woman whose story may not be told in the headlines, but whose name is honored in the heavens. She doesn't seek revenge, because she knows Allah's justice is enough. She doesn't demand recognition, because she knows the Most High sees everything. And in that pain, and in that patience, she is elevated. She is purified. She is loved in a way that no human love could ever match. When a woman uplifts her home, she uplifts a nation. Her influence begins in the quiet corners of the house, not on a stage or in a boardroom. It begins in the way she raises her children, supports her husband, serves her parents, and carries the emotional and spiritual weight of her family with dignity. She teaches without preaching, leads without forcing, and heals without demanding anything in return. Her home is not just a place of walls and furniture. It becomes a sanctuary of values, of love, light. When she nurtures that space with faith, wisdom, and sacrifice, she plants seeds that continue to grow for generations. The impact of her character echoes far beyond the limits of her home. The softness in her tone, the warmth in her actions, the firmness in her faith. These shape the hearts of her children and the direction of her family. When she teaches her child how to pray, when she encourages her husband to trust in Allah during hard times, when she chooses sabr over conflict, when she places barakah before material comfort, she is building more than a home. She is building a foundation for an ummah. One household built on taqwa, built on love for Allah, built on respect and discipline, can change a community. And when enough homes are changed by the silent leadership of a righteous woman, an entire nation can be transformed. The Prophet said that each of us is a shepherd responsible for our flock, and a woman in her home is entrusted with that responsibility. It is not a small role, it is not a background duty, it is a divine mission. And those who understand it with clarity know that it requires strength, vision, and relentless faith. Her work may not be recognized in public, but it is honored in the heavens. Her does for her children, her sleepless nights during their illness, her sacrifices for their education, her forgiveness for their mistakes. These are acts of power, of leadership, of transformation. A woman does not have to be loud to lead. She leads in the way. She responds with calmness when everyone else is stressed. She leads in the way she preserves the atmosphere of peace in her home. She leads in the way she teaches her children about Allah, about character, about compassion. She leads when she feeds her family with halal, when she chooses humility over pride, when she encourages salah, when she turns off what is haram, when she gives advice not with harshness, but with love. Her leadership is not measured in titles, but in taqwa, in service, in impact. History has shown again and again that behind every great man was a woman who believed in him, guided him, or raised him. The leaders of this ummah were once children in the arms of mothers who whispered du'as into their ears. Their strength began in a home, where a woman gave them the tools to walk through life with dignity and faith. Her power may be hidden, but it is foundational. Her influence may be quiet, but it shapes the world in ways that only Allah fully knows. Silence, when held with dignity, echoes louder than 1,000 speeches. A woman who chooses not to respond with noise, not to fight every battle with words, not to prove herself at every turn, is not weak, she is wise. Her silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is filled with understanding, filled with restraint, filled with trust in Allah's justice. In a time where everyone is rushing to speak, to argue, to be heard, a woman who chooses silence with dignity stands out. Her silence is not submission to injustice. It is a conscious decision to let her actions, her character, and her faith speak for her. Many times, people misunderstand silence. They think it means weakness, powerlessness, or fear. But in reality, silence can be the greatest form of strength. It is what allows a woman to absorb pain without becoming bitter. It is what gives her the clarity to respond with grace when others expect anger. It is what allows her to hold her honor when others lose theirs. A woman who knows when to remain silent protects not only her dignity but also her soul. She chooses peace over ego. She chooses reflection over reaction. And she places her trust in Allah more than in her own words. There is power in being still when the world is shouting. There is strength in not responding to slander, not lowering yourself to gossip, not retaliating when your heart is bruised. Because that silence is filled with sabr, with tawakkul, with wisdom. It is the silence of someone who knows that justice does not always come from people, but always comes from Allah. That silence is not void of meaning. It is full of prayer. It is full of quiet conversations with the Lord of the worlds. It is filled with nights of crying into the sajda and days of holding the tongue for His sake. When a woman guards her tongue, holds her peace, and walks away with dignity, she wins a battle that many never even see. She saves herself from the weight of sins that come from the tongue. She protects her family from the fires of conflict. She chooses her akara over temporary satisfaction. And though the world may not applaud her silence, the angels write every moment of it. They write the moments she held back when she could have erupted. They write the moments she stayed quiet while her heart was breaking. They write the moments she chose dignity over drama. The Prophet N taught us that whoever believes in Allah and the last day should speak good or remain silent. A believing woman takes this to heart. Her silence is not laziness. It is discipline. It is the mark of someone who knows that not every attack deserves a response. Not every insult requires defense. Not every situation needs noise. Sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is say nothing, because her silence is filled with the presence of Allah. It becomes her shield. It becomes her beauty. It becomes her voice when words would only take away from her light. She doesn't need the world to validate her worth, because Allah already has. A woman's value is not tied to likes, attention, or applause. It's not measured by how many people notice her, praise her, or celebrate her. Her worth was written by the one who created her soul. When Allah honors someone, no one else's opinion can diminish that. And a woman who understands this walks with a quiet confidence. She doesn't chase the spotlight, because she knows her value is already secure. She doesn't need to prove anything, because her dignity isn't up for debate. She knows that being seen by people doesn't make her worthy. Being seen by Allah does. In a world obsessed with image, popularity, and status, this kind of woman is rare. She is not moved by trends, she is not shaken by criticism, and she is not addicted to validation. She walks her path, sometimes alone, sometimes misunderstood, but always rooted in purpose. Her connection with her Lord gives her a strength that cannot be manufactured. It comes from within. From knowing that she was created with care, with intention, with honor. From knowing that Allah chose her soul to be a woman, and that alone is a sign of her nobility. When she faces rejection, she doesn't crumble. When people ignore her, she doesn't lose herself. When society tells her she isn't enough, she remembers that Allah created her exactly as she needed to be. Her eyes, her voice, her heart, her experiences. None of it is random. She doesn't compare herself to others because she knows that her journey is her own. She doesn't compete for attention because she seeks a different audience. The one who never sleeps, never forgets, never stops watching over her. This woman may not have her name written in headlines, but her name is known by the angels. She may not be followed by crowds, but she is followed by mercy. She may not be the loudest in the room, but her sincerity shakes the heavens. She remembers that the mother of Isa a.s. was alone when she was chosen, that Khadija Arak was behind the scenes when she supported the Prophet on, that Fatimah lived in simplicity and yet held the light of legacy. These were women who didn't need the world's validation, because they had Allah's. Every time she chooses truth over popularity, modesty over display, prayer over performance, she reinforces that her worth is not up for sale. She walks with her head high, not out of arrogance, but out of faith. Not because the world praises her, but because she knows her Creator does. Her silence, her tears, her efforts in the unseen, all of it is witnessed, all of it is recorded, and all of it matters more than the fleeting noise of this world. She doesn't need to prove her beauty to strangers, because Allah sees the beauty of her character. She doesn't need to argue for her respect, because Allah already wrote her honor. She doesn't need to demand recognition, because Jannah is waiting for the ones who are patient, sincere, and faithful.